Okay, great. Welcome everybody. This is the second ever Ann Arbor Solar Stories, which is part of GLREA's My Solar Stories and Thursday night energy events. I'm going to share my screen here. And okay, so this is where you are. My name is Julie Roth, and I run the Solarize program with the City of Ann Arbor's Office of Sustainability and Innovations. And so I'm helping the GLREA host the My Solar Stories that's focused on Ann Arbor. And so today's solar story is going to be presented by Mike Steinberg, who is a phenomenal human and civil rights lawyer, professor, U of M person who used to be like in charge of the whole, I don't know, what do you call it, Mike? The
legal program at the ACLU.
Yeah, the ACL, the LC. I was like, you're director of it. You were the legal. Anyway, Mike is amazing, and he's going to tell us about his solar story today. The solar stories are sponsored. GLREA is sponsored by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE, by McNaughton McKay Electric Company, and by Harvest Solar. Oops, sorry about that. You should know some things about the GLREA if you don't already. There are Thursday evening events all the time, and you can sign up for them on their website. The first Thursday of every month, as I said, is the Ann Arbor Solar Stories. That's where you are. The second Thursday of each month are clean energy seminars, which are really, really interesting. All kinds of interesting topics have been hosted on those. I highly recommend it. Third Thursday of every month, hosted by Diane Van Buren, is Detroit Solar Stories. And then the fourth Thursday is My Solar Stories, or an energy Q&A, one or the other, where you can come get kind of all your questions about energy answered by the experts that hang out in these sorts of Zoom calls. The GLREA is celebrating its 30-year anniversary. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization formed in 1991. It's supported by members to educate and advocate for renewable energy in the Great Lakes. And they do an amazing job of doing both those things, educating and advocating legislatively for renewable energy. So if you're not a member of GLREA, I really strongly recommend it if you're interested. You can renew your membership. You can financially sponsor a GLREA membership for a local teacher or student who you think might be interested in such. Let other folks know about GLREA so we can grow membership and keep it moving, keep the organization viable and able to continue its legislative and educational work. And of course, you can make a financial donation, and John Freeman would be happy to help you do that should you be interested. And so that is all I'm going to say about that. And I am going to hand it over to Mike Steinberg.
Thank you, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here. Julie promised me that if I signed up for solar energy and install solar panels, my house would look like the house in my background. And so I said yes. And it doesn't quite look as good, but I'm super happy that I made the decision to go solar. So I see this as being very informal, and I'm be happy to answer questions as we go along, but I'm basically gonna just tell you how I became interested in solar, why I decided to go forward, how thrilled I am that I'm doing it, and some of the work that I'm doing informally to encourage others to do the same. So I grew up in Maine, and when I was very young, I went to this alternative energy structure, and they had solar panels. It was a long time ago. And ever since then, I like the idea of being independent from the power companies, being off the grid. But of course, it was unattainable for me. Even when I was able to buy my first house, I was a lawyer for the ACLU and I didn't make that much money and it was very costly. And there were disincentives actually in Ann Arbor of all places to install solar panels because until fairly recently, if you put solar panels on your house, they would reassess your house and the increased value of the house due to solar panels would increase your taxes. I thought that was not very advisable. And luckily the state legislature, maybe because of some of the people on this call, passed a law prohibiting that. And so that changed. In addition to Julie's program, Solarize, plus the federal tax credit, convinced me that I could finally do it. Solarize is an amazing program, and Julie is an amazing human being. It's a program not just for people in Ann Arbor, but people for, I believe, all of Washtenaw County, where they will vet various solar installers and then put on parties, online parties. And if you can get 10 or more people, I believe, to agree to go with that installer, everybody gets a 15% discount. That, in addition to the federal tax credit, which for 2020 was 28%, 26%, I guess, made it affordable for me. Then I had to convince my family. You see, we had this thing called the pandemic, and they wanted to get a hot tub, so we'd have something to do besides watch television in our house and work in our house and do everything else in our house. And I said, we're not getting a hot tub if it costs so much to heat. Our neighbors had one. It was $50 to $75 a month extra in the winter, at least, or that's what they told me. And I don't like the idea of generating, more pollution in order for me to take a hot tub at my house. DTE is our provider. They still have some coal plants, nuclear power plants with tremendous waste. And, I don't want to contribute to climate change or more pollution. And so I use the hot tub as leverage with my family to agree to make the investment in solar panels, and it worked. Before we had solar, and we went online towards the very end of last year. Before we had solar panels, our yearly electric bill was about $1,800. Now we got a notice from DTE saying, we're not going to bill you, we're not going to send you a bill. Once it gets up to $30, we'll send you a bill. We decided to get a battery in addition to solar panels for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just don't like the fact that DTE charges you a certain amount per kilowatt. And then when you have excess and you sell it back to them, you get a fraction of that. And so when you have a battery, the excess energy that you generate goes into the battery and it's stored for the evening when the sun goes down. Another big reason I wanted a battery was because we live on a ravine. There's lots of trees back there and our power lines are in the midst of the ravine. And it seems like every time there's a windstorm or a rainstorm, a tree falls down and we lose power. And if you have a battery, you can use that as backup energy for that time. And in May, in fact, we had a windstorm and everybody in the neighborhood lost energy, lost power. And our lights popped on, ours went off and then it went on and I was so happy. And it wasn't loud. You know, I walked down the street, nobody had power except for the people that had the generators, and you can smell the gas and hear the loud noise, and it made me very happy. So I'm going to show you, assuming this works, I'm going to give you a little tour of, can you see the house here? Okay. This is my house. It's not a very fancy house. It's like 1,800 square feet. The back, though, faces south, and it's fairly high above the trees. It gets full sun, and we hired Sumter Solar to install the solar panels, and this is them putting it up last October. This is what it looks like when it was done. We were able to get 23 solar panels. The amount of solar panels you can get is limited, apparently, by our power companies because of state law. People can correct me if I'm getting this wrong. But because I said I wanted to get an electric vehicle, they allowed us to actually cover the area that we were hoping to cover. This is what it looks like on the outside. It's behind some trees. It's very, you can't really see it. This is the battery in our basement, very unobtrusive and no problem so far. This is what it looks like a couple days ago. So I have lots of trees, but the roof is high enough that it gets pretty much full sun all day. This this was on May 6th. They have these apps that make me very happy. Whenever I'm feeling down, I look at my solar app on my phone. And this is when we lost power. And you can see we lost power at 11:44 a.m. We had sun, though, enough sun. And it was both charging my battery and charging the house, no power at all. And this is what I credit my leverage to get it. We now have a hot tub. I want to show you a few charts. This comes up. So these are charts of each month. And I was shocked that in January of 21, when we had hardly any sun, it still generated. This green is the amount that the system generated, and the red is the amount that we consumed. So we generated more than a third of our energy, even in Michigan in the winter. This was, oops. This is March. We generated almost as much energy as we used. This is April. May is the only month where we actually generated more energy than we used. And last month, we were almost there. We did use the air conditioning a few times in June, and that's, I think, the reason why we generated less. This is, oh, this is my favorite week of the year, June 11th. We used a little air conditioning that day, but for the rest of the days, we generated more than twice the amount of energy than we used. And I don't know. I wonder if other people feel so excited when that happens. This is for the half the year. You know, we're close to our system production is close to the consumption, and says we generated $838 worth of energy in the first 6 months of the year. And this is just a comparative chart from January through June, how much energy we produced, and in the 6 months, how much carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide we saved, and equivalent of trees planted. One more set of photos. This is today. In preparation for today, I took a lot of screenshots of my my app just to give you a sense. At 9 o'clock, my battery was being charged, generated 2.3 kilowatts per whatever. I don't understand all the science here. This is 9:30. By 11:30, our battery was almost charged. The amount of kilowatts was going up. And then by 12:15, not only was the battery full, and we were using energy from solar, but it also was sending excess out to DTE. And same thing at 3:30 and 4:30. So what else did I want to show you? Sorry. I wanted to show you how much it cost us. So this is from Sumter. It was a total of, well, here, let me go down here. The total cost of the system would have been $39,500, but we got the 15% Solarize discount, so that brought it down to $33,500. And then the tax credit, which our accountant confirmed, should be coming soon, about $8,700. So the total amount of the system with the battery was about $25,000, and I just think it's a great investment. I mean, the number one reason we did it, of course, was to do what we think is our part in trying to reduce the carbon footprint that we have on the earth. I don't need to tell all of you we have an existential crisis with climate change, and you see it happening all across the country right now with the high temperatures in the Northwest, and the floods in Grosse Pointe, and the fires and all that. And so I just feel really happy that I was able to do it. And you know, I'm doing what I can to encourage other people to do it as well. I've done it. Julie asked me to co-host one of these Solarize parties, and so I sent out messages to a lot of my friends and colleagues, and I think we had about, I'm not certain, but about 10 of those who came to our party decided to go ahead. and get solar. I show people my app everywhere I go. I post on Facebook, encouraging people to I post like that photo one of those photos of the energy that I saved today. And yeah, it's, if you can afford it and you can take, we use an equity loan to do it, but we are told that in 10 years it will pay off itself. If we happen to sell the house, the value of the house will be higher. And so, yeah, that's my solar story, and I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mike. I have two clarifying questions. Well, one question and one comment, and I'll let everyone else. But the comment is there were 16 people in your group that went solar. Just so you can take some kind of karmic credit times 16. And then the second thing is that cost. I just want to make sure that folks know that is solar plus battery. And could you, do you have a sense of, well, first of all, how much the battery was in as a portion of that cost? And then, yeah, basically, because, yeah.
The battery was expensive. I don't have it right here. I'm thinking it was $6,000 or $7,000. So if you don't get the battery, you can subtract that from your total cost. And yeah, I had 23 panels because of the energy that they predicted I would use. And so if you get fewer panels, of course, that would also lower the cost. Now, the tax credit, you should tell them about the tax credit, Julie. Did it go down to 24% or something?
Yeah, the federal income tax credit right now is 26% this year and next year. And then, and actually we weren't, I think by when you went, it was possibly sunsetting before that, and then they extended it. So they extended it. So this year and next year it's 26%. In 2023, it goes down to 22%. And then after that, it's gone. So it's, it's a huge amount of money, and it applies to both the solar and the battery, assuming you get a battery with solar. If you get a battery all by itself, then I don't think it qualifies.
Ben?
Yes, but now do you have to have tax? Like I have no tax liability. So would that benefit me? It would. How does that work?
No.
I don't, I live in Kalamazoo County.
Yeah, if you don't pay income taxes, if you have no income tax liability, then you can't take the income tax credit. It's a serious issue. And we've been advocating, I'm advocating, I think GLREA maybe also, to change that to just a rebate, because we're not able to, I mean, in terms of equity, folks who are lower income, who don't have a income tax liability that is high enough to take advantage of that. Why are we doing something that is, once again, benefiting those of us who have more means? It's really frustrating, but that is the federal tax credit. Yep.
Yeah, that makes no sense. But hopefully the new administration will start pushing stuff like that. We'll get enough members, but to vote in favor of it. I think Bob and then Stephen.
Hi, I have a Solar Edge also, and my screens are a bit different, maybe because I don't have a battery, but I'm wondering, do you have to enter your consumption numbers manually, or does somehow the Solar Edge gather that information?
Somehow it gathers it. I have no idea how it works, but yeah, I don't enter anything.
I think some of the solar people on the line could probably answer it, but I believe it's because he has a battery that it shows consumption as well. Although I think because mine is different as well. But there is if you're in DTE territory, and I don't know if the other, if consumers does it as well. There's something that you can get called an energy bridge. And I have this box in my house. It's annoying because I spend like $2 a month on it, which somewhat annoys me, but I really value the data that it gives me because it does show me consumption. So I get this this picture. I'll see if I can pull it up for you in a minute, that shows me in a different way, in a different graphic way, my consumption and my usage. And I don't have to have a battery and the inverter to get that.
Interestingly, this battery has helped us conserve energy too, because I can't stand when the air conditioner goes on, because I'm gonna be using more energy than I produce. So we don't use the air conditioning very much anymore. I think Stephen and then Vince.
Hi, there's been a couple of folks that have done some LLC, generated an LLC to purchase this solar system, take the tax credit, and then lease it, sell it back to the people that are buying it, that want to install it. So far, I think that's always been done for a 501c3, but I wonder if that could be a way we could approach that for people who don't have a tax liability. That'd be an interesting mechanism for us to explore. And I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, so I don't know, or a tax accountant, so I don't know if that's a possibility for us. But it's something that certainly could be approached by this group, really, to try to generate a couple LLCs so we could invest in that stuff for everybody who wants it, that just can't take advantage of all the tax returns.
Stephen, that's a really interesting idea. That there's a group called Solar Faithful that some of you may be familiar with, that works on that model for houses of worship and other nonprofits. And they help, like, let's say a congregation who wants to get solar on their house of worship, and they form an LLC. They do the upfront investing, and you can spread it out over lots of people, and then they get monthly payments back. And so I think it's a very creative idea to think about how that would work for individuals.
Well, right, and it might tie in with solar, with Solarize too, or wherever else could set up a Solarize system that, like you have, Julie.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, there's so many ways we can make, or the government can make this accessible to everybody, and should be doing that. I've got Vince and then Heidi.
Hi, thank you, Professor Steinberg. Thanks for presenting tonight. I have a passive solar house we designed and built ourselves back in 1986, 87. We haven't had air conditioning until recently, and it's a mini split for just occasional use and very efficient. We don't use much electricity. We don't have solar panels. My complaint, or my gripe, or my avocation here would be, how can we get DTE Energy to pay us a reasonable amount for renewable energy that is put on the grid, as is happening in a lot of states. And a lot of places are, generating electricity and putting it on the grid, and to benefit everybody. And you see what happened in Texas, where they were locked out because their system wasn't connected. So I would really love to see the state of Michigan, which has now been said and researched pretty effectively, to say that we could generate twice the amount of energy the whole state uses using wind in the state of Michigan. I mean, it's a tremendous resource that we could tap into. So since you're a lawyer, maybe, I don't know if you looked into this, but is there any avenue we can take to try and push DTE to the green side versus the black side?
Well, I'm a civil rights lawyer. I know about protests and raising hell, and that may be the solution. I just think it's outrageous that the energy companies can dictate the limit on the number of panels you can put on your own property. And it's obviously part of some deal that they made to allow rooftop solar panels. I mean, Julie or John would know a lot more about this than I do, but it's outrageous. And you see in the Northwest, you know, they don't have enough power when it gets hot, and it's going to continue to get hotter and hotter. And this could, you know, this could be part of the solution, but you know, obviously the profit margin is of utmost importance to them. But I mean, Julia, John, are there
Yeah,
things
let
that
me,
could be
let me,
done?
let me say a couple words. First of all, state law says that you're allowed to build a solar system that will generate the amount of power you've historically used. And the reason why Michael was able to increase his system is that he said he was going to buy an electric car, which increases the amount of power he's going to use. So they allowed that. But they don't want individuals, homeowners, becoming a little mini utility. And so that's why you're only allowed to build a system that meets your historical load. Now, there is a deal that's been cut in Michigan, as well as every state in the country, and that is in return for giving utilities a monopoly within their territory, that they therefore become a regulated company, and the Michigan Public Service Commission regulates, you know, the investor-owned utilities in Michigan and a few others. And so anytime a utility wants to raise their rates, they have to get essentially permission from the Public Service Commission, or you have to go to the legislature to pass legislation, which then establishes a policy framework from which the utilities are governed and from which the Public Service Commission then regulates the utilities. But as you can imagine, and there have been several examples in the last 20 years, that when there's a radical new business element that's been introduced, that's taken down some long established corporations that have had tremendous success. I mean, the telephone companies are an obvious example. So the investor-owned utilities around the country have noticed this, and they are very adamant about not wanting to see the rise of solar energy take down these corporations. And so they are fighting back with every arrow in their quiver, which means a lot of campaign contributions. They run ads on TV to try and organize public opinion. And they even use, you know, 501c3s and C4s to, again, communicate legally, though it's shady tactics, dark money, in order to maintain their monopoly. And so, and that's the reason why organizations like the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association exist, is that the way for us to promote renewable energy in Michigan is to change the established policy. And that's why we want everyone to join our organization, because we need to get so big that we can take on these big utilities through the power of public opinion to do that. And so this is a struggle. This is a struggle for the soul of America and the soul of the world, because, you know, and we can't underestimate the utilities, because they're clever, because what they're doing is they're trying to co-opt the small scale renewable energy industry by closing down coal plants, and they're starting to incorporate utility scale solar and utility scale wind projects. So they want to offer individuals and business renewable energy, but here's the kicker. They want all of us to pay more for it, so they continue to make money hand over fist. And so Michael is a civil rights attorney. Well, that's exactly what we're advocating, that ever since 2008, with the enactment of Public Act 295, that established a principle that every homeowner or small business has the right to own and install their own energy system. And what we're trying to do is to build upon that right. And that's exactly what DTE and consumers are trying to oppose, is they don't want to see any expansion of that right. And so one classic example of this is community solar, because Michael mentioned that his house faces south, rock and roll. There are a lot of houses that don't face south and that they can't access solar. If there was a community solar statute, which means that you can build a solar farm in some, public property, and then anybody could buy a panel or two or three from the solar farm, they'd be able to get the investment tax credit just as if the panel was on your home. And then whatever amount of power those panels generate, in states like Minnesota, where they did enact a community solar statute, the utility is required to show on your bill the amount of electricity has been deducted from the amount that they buy. But again, this is something that utilities are opposing. So once again, this is a struggle. Like all social change, it's a fight, and we need everyone's help to weigh in on our side. And we're on the side of history, and we just need all of you to weigh in. And that's my little soapbox speech, and I'll stop.
I just want to make one last point. Good job. Vermont Mountain Energy actually saved $1 million somewhere back like a year and a half ago, because they allowed people to connect to the grid and generate electricity and feed it into the grid. They saved $1 million because they didn't have to buy peak energy at the hottest part of the day for air conditioning. So they community, like John was talking about, to tap into that resource. So
we've got Heidi and Robert and Marcia. Caroline, I'm looking at the hands, and Harvey and Andrew, sorry.
Thank you, everybody, for all this information. It's really great. I had a question about, since it's on the south side of your house, do you notice a significant, like, is your house cooler because now your roof is not getting the heat the panels are? No? Because I have a similar
noticed the difference.
No? I was thinking that would cut down on the air conditioning need.
I mean, but I haven't done a scientific study. Julie, does that cool down your house by having black solar panels on it?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know what kind of heat transfers through the panel to the roof to the inside. I do know that because it's solar tends to be put on the parts of your roof of your shingles that bake the most in the sun, it actually is protective of the shingles, because those are the shingles that tend to degrade the most when they bake in the sun. So that's like kind of a little side benefit.
Thanks.
Robert?
Robert, you're on mute.
He's not on mute,
Yeah.
but we can't hear him. You might have like a microphone not on or something.
Robert, do you want to ask your question in the chat and we'll get back to you? Because we can't hear you. Why don't we go to Marcia, and then I think Caroline, do you have a question? I'm not sure. And then
Sure.
Harvey.
There's time.
Okay, yeah. Marcia?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your information, and it sounds like you're really getting the right vibes out of this project of yours. I also have 20 panels on my house, and I have an EV that I charge. I've had an EV since 2012. And one of the advantages, I have consumer power, and I was a pretty early user. So we've had the panels for more than 10 years, and I pay practically nothing. I pay the fees, basically the fees for my costs. And that includes charging the car, and it includes charging a golf cart. I mean, it sort of, it goes on and on. What I wanted to ask was about the batteries. I do not have batteries, and I was curious to know what kind of a battery, what was the make of the battery that you got, if you're happy with it, and what amount of energy does it store?
I know it's an LG battery. Oh, here it is. LG Chem lithium ion 9.3 kilowatt usable. I don't know what that means.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But it won't get me all the way through the night. It goes down to, when they said it originally, it was at like, the lowest it would go down to was 40%. And I asked, it seemed like we were wasting energy that way. And so it's now down to 15%.
Oh.
It'll never go below 15% charge. In case we lose power, we'll have enough energy to get us, keep the refrigerator and the computer and the modem on until the daylight when it starts to charge again. I am not an expert in batteries, and there's probably people who know more than I.
Okay,
Julie.
I have one more comment, and then I'm finished. I understand also that when it comes to the costs of putting solar panels on your roof, that you can also, if you need to replace the roofing first, because you don't want to put it on a roof that's
Right.
20 years old, you can also write that off in your costs.
Yes,
You get the
I've
tax
heard that.
credit. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely want to get your roof fixed before that. Ours was only, I think, 5 years old, so we didn't have to, but you can add that into the amount that you're entitled to a partial federal tax credit.
Mhm.
So I think if we're going in order, it's Caroline, Harvey, and then Andrew.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
your presentation.
Yeah.
You too. I hope this isn't a Debbie Downer question, but I feel like because I clicked on the link, I started getting social media ads from, like, I don't know, conservative sources about the fact that it is bad for the environment to make the panels or something. So do we know that, even though the panels themselves maybe use more energy to make than, I don't know, other stuff, it still is an obvious good? I mean, it seems logical to me, but does anyone on this call know about that?
I mean, I've done a little research. I don't consider myself as expert, and I felt satisfied. But Julie or John?
Well, John Sarver can chime in too. There certainly is going to be, solar panels are warranted for 25 years, and they last even longer than that. And so with the exponential growth of solar occurring in the last 3 or 4 years, and it's only going to continue to grow, in 20 years or so, we're going to have a major problem or a major situation to address. But there are already discussions on how to do that right now. And the thing I guess I would argue is that, unlike nuclear waste, which has radioactivity, which has a half-life and has to be stored for hundreds, if not thousands of years before it's safe, or in the case of coal ash, which is full of hazardous metals and very toxic chemicals, which pollutes the water table tremendously, solar panels are made up of silicon. And there's some trace elements into it. But most of the materials, the vast majority of the materials, are not harmful to human beings and can be recycled. And the racking, of course, which solar panels are laid upon, generally is either metal or aluminum, and that can be recycled as well. So I'm not going to downplay the issue. It is going to be an issue, but I think that when you compare it with the other commonly known sources of energy, the challenge of dealing with worn out panels is much more manageable than dealing with the challenges of dealing with vast amounts of coal ash or vast amounts of nuclear waste. And so that's something we're going to have to deal with, but I think it's a manageable problem that we will get on top of.
Yeah, I would just add, I think John put it in the proper context that certainly there are some toxic materials used in production, manufacturing, which is true for actually a lot of electronic products. If we start looking into a variety of the products that we kind of use every day and go back and see how they're made, there are issues. To me, John has kind of put the risk in perspective, but the key issue is what kind of regulatory setup do we have with respect to production of certain products. I think in the United States, certainly we're in pretty good shape compared to countries like China, and of course, we are getting panels from China. So a lot of panels. And so, yeah, it's an issue. I think it needs to be put in perspective. Recycling, there's a lot of talk now about how to do recycling and how to make it, kind of gear up, because it's already here to some extent, but it's coming. And there is a lot of research being done on how to make panels with less problem materials. And so the issue is known, and I think it's not, it needs to be addressed. And I think from what I've read, we're heading in the right direction.
Good
Thank you.
question. Harvey and then Andrew. Hi, Harvey. You need to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I tried to use my space bar. It didn't work. Several things. Number one, my legislators tell me, my local, state legislators tell me that DTE has so many lobbyists with their handouts to the majority of our legislature that they're even on the premises at the state capitol. And when they have votes that have to do with this, the legislators are running out in the hallway to confer with the DTE lobbyists. And it's a very steep slope to overcome. That's number one. Number two, I've learned that there are over 40 municipalities in the state of Michigan that have their own electric production. Lansing being one, and Lansing fairly recently expanded to East Lansing. And I wonder what it would take to have Ann Arbor get the Lansing power source to feed us instead of DTE. Municipal programs, I wasn't aware of this until fairly, in the last 6 months, but when you have a municipal outfit, they're interested in serving customers, and the one in Lansing, for instance, supports its customers to put solar panels on the roofs, as opposed to trying to get in the way of it, like DTE and Consumers does. So that's one major thing. I've had solar panels on my roof since 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in August. The costs are a little daunting to me. I paid about 12 grand for 15 panels, no battery. And that's like a third of what you paid, Mike. So I'm a little confused about what was being paid for. When I did it 2 years ago, I think I had a little bit more federal rebate on my taxes. And I'm wondering two things about the state and the feds. One is, does anybody on this panel have a sense of what the commission might be able to do in the next decade, we'll say? I mean, there are people like us clamoring for removing the cap because the utility companies only have to provide for, what is it, 1%, something like that, of all of their power can be renewables. And once they hit that cap, they don't have to allow it anymore. And we're talking about removing the cap. I think Michigan has the tightest cap of any state in the country. And again, that's not an area of expertise for me, but I have a sense of that. So I'm curious, what are the expectations of both the state commission loosening up and actually creating an opportunity for everybody that wants to go solar, and the feds also getting on board and not just extending this rebate for another year, but forever or whatever. So those are my interests.
Let me jump in on the Ann Arbor questions real quick, and then I'll let John, looks like he wants to jump in, but I want to make sure we leave enough time for Andrew and Ben and other questions. But
yeah, I want to thank you and John and John squared, as we would say here in Ann Arbor. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, and I want to mention that, Mike, in terms of like the number of panels is about twice as many as what you have, and the battery is another third of his system cost, most likely. So that it's probably about, equivalent. But in terms of Ann Arbor and municipal utilities, this is a topic that is certainly a robust one that our community is having right now. It's a tricky one, because if we actually purchase a utility in Ann Arbor, what we're purchasing, which first of all, we don't have enough money. And if we did have enough money and used every penny that we had and every penny that we don't have and all of the political will that we would expend and the fight that would take, what we would own is aging infrastructure, poles and wires that we don't want. And what we wouldn't own is any renewable energy. We would have done all of that expense and all of that work to own the infrastructure, and we wouldn't have shut down a single coal plant. So Ann Arbor is working very hard on some very creative ways that we can legally stand up next to the utility and start reducing the amount that we're using by distributed generation in other ways. So we're working on those things, but my bias is that a municipal utility is just the wrong expenditure of our political capital, our people capital, and our money capital. But I know that it's a robust debate and other people will feel differently. And you're right that municipal utilities do better than invest to own utilities. That is for sure the truth. And I'll
Real quickly,
I don't know, John. Yeah, I want to make sure we have time, but
real
go ahead.
quickly, 2 comments. The city of Boulder, Colorado actually voted to create a municipal utility, but once they moved forward to actually try and implement it, they came across all sorts of hurdles and the expense was outrageous, and they've completely backed off from going down that road. So Julie is 1,000% correct. The Public Service Commission only has power that's given to it by the state laws that govern what the Public Service Commission can regulate upon. And so Dan Scripps, the chairman of the Public Service Commission, says he has said publicly there's no rational reason for having the 1% cap in place. And he advocates the lifting of the cap. So now it comes down to, we have to get the votes in the House and the Senate. And we think we actually have the votes to lift the cap in this House Energy Committee. The problem is, and this is politics 101, that the chairman of the House Energy Committee lives in Monroe, which is a monster coal plant run by DTE. There is obviously the nuclear plant in that area of the state. And now Bolino, who wants to run for the state Senate. So he wants to raise money. And so he is stalling because DTE is in his backyard. So once again, we just have to work hard. And this is a bipartisan effort. It's not a Republican Democrat. It's those that are on our side versus those that are in the bag of the utilities. So I'll stop there and go back to Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. First of all, Robert did put in the chat here.
Oh,
And I'll just try and read it. He can't get his speaker going. His position is he feels net metering is the best and fairest. And he thinks that the MPSC is in bed with the power companies and what's needed is fair rate for net metered power. So thank you, Robert, for getting your comment into the chat. I hope I did it justice, but I really want to get to Andrew, who's been incredibly patient.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, John, for putting this on. My wife and I, we just started looking into solar panels for our house in Pittsfield Township in Ann Arbor School District, but we still feel we're part of the greater Ann Arbor area. And this is a really important issue, everything that you guys have mentioned. But we've gotten one bid back to us so far. And one question is, we have a pretty good sized roof, and the panels that were suggested for us were only about 12 panels. We can see we have the capability of at least 20 panels. And somebody had mentioned here that if you're planning to buy a electric vehicle, that you can potentially increase the number of panels. And I just want to make sure that when we go to do this, we're maximizing the number of panels that we can get on our house, but also to give back to the energy grid or to our neighbors. And I'm just wondering if any of you had any experience with that, or, DTE regulating, you can only have so many panels for your usage. And
Yeah,
and I have a second follow-up after that.
yeah, sure. And I know that GLREA really desperately wants to end right at 8, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll try and move quickly through these. And I see Abraham's hand came up, but my understanding, I don't know, Mike, how you got DTE to agree to a planned purchase. My experience is that they won't, that they will only allow for an expansion when you have a receipt for a purchase. But apparently maybe Mike's installer has a special relationship with DTE, but it's a risky thing. I mean, they won't always do it. But you could talk to the installers to find out if they are successful in getting DTE to expand your system based on plan. But the other thing you should know is that in a lot of ways, solar installations are a bit plug and play, right? So you can put up a installation if you know you're going to need expansion in the future for electrification, either a vehicle or your household, your furnace, all the things I'm doing, then you can plan it with that in mind. So make sure your inverter is set up and your panel set up is easy to expand on. And then that's pretty easy to just add panels.
If I may, we got around that very problem. We knew exactly how much energy we were using. And DTE was allowing a number of panels on the basis of our house, which was already minimally using DTE by management tactics. And what we ended up doing was to basically take the largest inverter. So we stuck to the panels originally that DTE said we could do, but we increased the inverter to the very largest, which was available. Once that was installed and inspected by DTE, we could thereafter, the next year, double the number of panels without them knowing. Same goes for the batteries, by the way. They didn't need to know that we did have batteries, and we had 2 Tesla batteries, and they don't even know quite how to test it or how to measure that properly. But anyway.
And I was also told that if I were to purchase an electric vehicle, that I could, instead of purchasing a battery now for my house, to actually use the batteries from the car to power the house. Does anybody have any experience with that? They were saying that the battery capability of an automobile would have much more storage power for electricity than the standard battery in a house. Does anybody had any experience with that or?
My understanding is that is on its way, but not here immediately right now. I think the Ford F-150 is one of the first coming out with a vehicle to house or something like that, battery that can do that. Ben seems to be gesturing. You might know something about this, Ben.
There is actually one of my coworkers' parents works in Detroit on vehicle to grid technology, and that should be coming out shortly. But Julie, you know as much as I do about what's currently available.
Yeah, I think we're right
should
on
I go
the
ahead
edge.
with my comment?
Sure.
Okay. Real briefly, so I live in the first legal tiny house in Kalamazoo, zero energy ready. So our speaker has 1,800 square foot, 230 square feet. I have a heat pump, passive solar, R55, and solar energy ready. And I'm just thinking, I purposely built smaller because I knew I had less opportunity. And so it seems like I would love it to cost proportionally less. I know it probably won't because of other things. So I just want to make that comment. Also, a quick question. Do you have a lobbying day? Does GLREA have a lobbying day to speak to our legislators? And that's it. And thank you for a fantastic meeting.
Quickly, the legislature, if you just read the paper yesterday, maybe today, they recessed for the summer after passing the educational appropriation budget. They won't be reconvening unless they call a special session until after Labor Day. And so we're going to be spending the summer contacting the House chairman of the House Energy Committee to try and urge him to hold a committee hearing on the 1% bill, as well as the community solar bill, but they won't be meeting in person until the fall. So we won't be doing anything. And frankly, we have done lobby days in the past, but we didn't last year because of COVID. And so we still got to navigate that new reality, whether it's safe to do in-person lobbying or whether we continue doing phone calls or setting up Zoom calls, which we've done as well.
I think that we have to call it because we are 4 minutes over and GLREA is so usually very tight and very good. And I don't want to be like the bad host that was the one that like failed and went over time. So I'm gonna, but Mike, wow, thank you for coming here and sharing your solar story. And you're amazing and you're a wonderful ambassador and just a great steward of the planet. And I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you, obviously, for what you do, and so many of you on this call do. As one of the people in the chat said, we are all in this together. We've got to do this. So thanks.
Thanks. Any last words, John or John? Do we take off? Okay. Everybody enjoy your night, and GLREA, as always, thank you. Love you guys.